Now, as promised, the news in detail will begin right here in Pakistan with our top story. One child has died and over 50 people have been injured in Azad Kashmir's Mirpur district after a 5.8 magnitude earthquake jolted several parts of this country. The death toll may rise. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the earthquake was 10 kilometers deep, with its epicenter lying 3 kilometers southeast of Mirpur. Tremors were also felt in Punjab, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, and Islamabad. Pakistan's military has begun rescue operations in all affected regions. Now, Pakistan has warned India of dire consequences over any potential false flag operation along the line of control. Military spokesperson Major General Asif Ghafoor says any misadventure by India will have consequences for regional security. Ghafoor says irresponsible statements by the Indian Army echo its own failures in occupied Kashmir. He says such statements aim to distract global attention from India's state terrorism in occupied Kashmir. He adds that Pakistan's armed forces are fully prepared to respond to any aggression. Meanwhile, Foreign Office spokesman Mohammad Faisal said India won't succeed in hiding its state terrorism with such diversions. Now, in a related development, 35 members of the U.S. Congress have written a letter to the UN expressing concern over the crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Writing to UN envoy Kelly Craft, they said the Kashmir dispute needs to be resolved urgently, as it could lead to nuclear war in South Asia. It said bilateral talks between India and Pakistan is of utmost importance for global peace and order. The lawmaker said India has suspended freedom of movement and communications in the valley since the 5th of August. Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan has met Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Iranian President Hassan Rouhani in New York. In separate meetings on the UN General Assembly sidelines, Khan updated both leaders on the humanitarian crisis in Indian-occupied Kashmir. Prime Minister Imran Khan and President Rouhani have vowed to work together for peace and stability in the region. Khan and Erdogan vowed to work for the welfare of Muslims around the world, especially in the occupied valley. Earlier, Prime Minister Khan met World Bank President David Malpass and discussed Pakistan's economy. Khan also met his Italian counterpart Giuseppe Conte and Swiss President Ueli Maurer, sharing details of the situation in occupied Kashmir. Now, in another development, the police chief of Indian-occupied Kashmir, Dilbagh Singh, admits the situation in occupied Kashmir is not normal. His statement contradicts the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's claims of normalcy in the valley. In an interview, Singh said over 3,000 Kashmiri youth have been arrested since the 5th of August. The police chief said there is no definite time frame for the release of Kashmiri politicians and leaders of the freedom struggle. Singh also refused to give any specifics on when the ongoing communications blackout in the valley will end. Well, the UK Supreme Court has ruled against Prime Minister Boris Johnson's suspension of Parliament. Supreme Court President Brenda Hale said Johnson's decision to advise the Queen to prorogue Parliament was unlawful. Lady Hale said the prorogation came about in exceptional circumstances. The court ruled that it is now up to Parliament to decide what to do next. House of Commons Speaker John Bercow has said Parliament will be convened tomorrow. Labour Party leader Jeremy Corbyn has called on Johnson to resign from his position and call a new election. Well, for more on this, we're now joined by Ollie Barrett, our correspondent in London. Ollie, thanks for your time. Ollie, on quite a momentous day for Brexit politics, put in context for us first, how significant was this ruling?
Calls from Jeremy Corbyn. We've seen calls from the Scottish National Party representatives in Parliament for him to consider his position, certainly. But I don't think Johnson is simply going to resign because of that. I think he has been determined to try and see Brexit through, as he puts it, by the 31st of October. But of course, what this ruling does do is limit his room for manoeuvre just that bit further. The extra week or so of parliamentary sitting time that this will entail, time for more scrutiny, more questions, and parliamentary committees to meet and so on, does certainly push him that bit harder.
And of course, that was Alex de Ruyter of the Birmingham-based political analyst of the Centre for Brexit Studies there speaking to us, in fact. Alex, tell us, what does the ruling mean for the UK's democracy, and what will be the Queen's role now going forward?
Yes, well, therein is a key point. I mean, the court, with its unanimous judgment, has clearly made a statement that they regard parliamentary sovereignty as the cornerstone of democracy in the UK, and therefore that the government, in the form of the executive, is subordinate to Parliament in terms of the two key functions identified, scrutiny and accountability to Parliament. They're another key points, and it's for this reason that the court has upheld the earlier Scottish Court of Sessions ruling that this was unlawful. And of course, in so doing, it has mandated that it is up to the Speaker to determine how to go forward, and hence that the Speaker, Mr John Berger, has called for Parliament to reconvene as soon as possible. What does it mean for democracy? Well, again, to reiterate, the UK is a parliamentary democracy. I mean, Parliament is sovereign. If people don't like the decisions that Parliament makes, if they don't like the level of scrutiny it offers on an executive in the form of the government of the day, then they can always vote them out for the next election. And indeed, I think this is Johnson's strategy, isn't it? Parliament is acting against the so-called will of the people, as he puts it, try and force them to an early election in the hope that he thinks he can get a majority thereafter.
All right, that was Alex de Ruyter again of the Centre for Brexit Studies speaking to us from Birmingham. We appreciate your time. Let's move on with the news. Iran has ruled out negotiating a new nuclear deal unless its signatories comply with the pact signed in 2015. Foreign Minister Javad Zarif has dismissed a proposal by the UK, France and Germany calling for a fresh nuclear accord with Iran. In a tweet, Zarif urged Europe to stop repeating what he called absurd US claims. Zarif said the 2015 nuclear deal failed because European signatories failed to fulfill their commitments. Earlier, France, Germany and the UK accused Iran of being behind recent attacks on Saudi oil installations. In a joint statement, the three governments said there is no other plausible explanation for the incident. The trio added that they support the ongoing investigation into the attack because it increased the risk of a major conflict. They said the airstrike underlines the importance of a political solution to the continuing conflict in Yemen. Now, in Yemen itself, Houthi rebels say airstrikes by government coalition forces have killed 16 people in Dalia province. They say 7 children are among the dead. The coalition has not yet confirmed the raid. Now in Libya, 20 UN-backed government troops were killed in airstrikes by eastern forces south of the capital, Tripoli. According to a statement from the Libyan Information Office, fighter jets targeted government positions in the Hira area. For the second day in a row, heavy fighting broke out between the Libyan army and Khalifa Haftar's forces. The Libyan Air Force targeted Haftar's troops in the cities of Sabia and Souq al-Khamis. The Libyan government of national accord claims it killed senior members of Haftar's forces in the airstrikes. For over 5 months, Tripoli has been caught in a vicious war between the UN-backed government and Haftar's army. On to news coming out of Egypt now, where over 500 people have been arrested after protests broke out against President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi over the weekend. In defiance of a ban on protests, thousands staged demonstrations in cities and towns across the country, demanding el-Sisi's resignation. Egyptian authorities also detained an award-winning human rights lawyer after she attended a judicial investigation into the arrests. Demonstrations followed accusations of presidential corruption by self-exiled Egyptian businessman Muhammad Ali, who demanded his removal. El-Sisi has called those allegations lies. Such demonstrations are rare in Egypt since protests were effectively banned after the military staged a coup in 2013. Much more news after this break. Please stay tuned. Eurozone crossover live now to the United Nations in New York, where the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is speaking at the General Assembly. Let's listen.
Including by utilizing the promise of technology and innovation as recommended by the high-level panel on digital cooperation that has concluded its report. Excellencies, as was emphasized in yesterday's Climate Action Summit, the climate emergency is a race we are losing, but it is a race we can win if we change our ways now. Even our language has to adapt. What once was called climate change is now truly a climate crisis. And what was once called global warming has more accurately become global heating. We are seeing unprecedented temperatures, unrelenting storms, and undeniable science. 10 days ago, in the Bahamas, I saw the ruin caused by Hurricane Dorian. That aftermath is a mere prelude to what science tells us is on its way. But something else is on its way, solutions. And the world is starting to move, not yet fast enough, but move in the right direction, away from fossil fuels and towards the opportunities of a green economy. And the Climate Summit highlighted some of the solutions we need to scale up in order to dramatically reduce emissions, keep temperatures rise to 1.5 degrees, and reach carbon neutrality by 2050. But we are not yet there. We must build on this momentum and do much more to be able to defeat climate change. Excellences, les peuples doivent jouir de libertés fondamentales que chaque pays a promis de faire respecter. Pourtant, nous sommes aujourd'hui à un moment critique où des droits longuement acquis sont menacés, mis à mal, détournés. Nous observons une grande impunité, y compris pour les violations du droit international humanitaire. Nous voyons éclore de nouvelles formes d'autoritarisme. Et dans trop d'endroits, la disparition de l'espace civique muselle les voix des citoyens. Des défenseurs des droits humains, des militants écologistes et des journalistes sont pris pour cible. Jour après jour, clic après clic, d'une caméra à l'autre, les systèmes de surveillance étendent leur emprise et empiètent sur la vie privée. Et ces fissures ne sont pas uniquement le signe d'un effondrement des règles régissant le comportement des États et de l'économie. Elles sont plus profondes. Elles questionnent notre compassion et notre humanité. Alors où l'on compte un nombre sans précédent de réfugiés et de déplacés, où est passée notre solidarité? Nous voyons des fronts.
All right, so again, you are seeing these live images coming out of the UN General Assembly, which of course has just begun with the speech by the UN Secretary General, Antonio Guterres. He started off by speaking, of course, about the climate crisis and then started speaking in French. We will, of course, keep a close eye on his statements there and get all the latest there to you once we receive it here at Indus News. Let's move on with the news for the moment and go to Iraq, where 2 mortar shells have landed near the U.S. embassy in the Iraqi capital. Iraqi security officials say no casualties were caused by this attack. They say 1 shell exploded inside Baghdad's fortified green zone and another landed in the Tigris River. Military checkpoints close to the embassy were shut down following the attack. Security officials say no one has yet claimed responsibility. The attack comes amid heightened tensions in the region following recent airstrikes on Saudi oil installations. President Donald Trump says the U.S. is not thinking of imposing further sanctions on North Korea. Meeting with the South Korean President Moon Jae-in in New York, Trump said he is getting along very well with Pyongyang. The 2 leaders met on the sidelines of the 74th UN General Assembly. Trump said he has a good relationship with North Korea's leader Kim Jong-un and is not considering taking any action against Pyongyang. Both leaders discussed ways to achieve practical results in working-level talks between the U.S. and North Korea. President Trump said he would want to know the probable outcomes of a 3rd summit with Kim before agreeing to it. Well, the European Court of Justice has ruled that Google does not have to remove links to sensitive personal data. The landmark case was brought by France for the right to remove all personal online links. Europe's top court decided the right to be forgotten rules do not apply outside the European Union. The judgment said Google is not bound to comply with requests to remove access to personal data. The judgment prevents the EU from acquiring powers to regulate the internet beyond its borders. 5 EU countries have agreed to accept migrants saved from the Mediterranean. The deal is meant to take pressure off southern European states. Interior ministers from 4 EU countries met in Malta to sign the new deal on migrants. The plan will be presented to interior ministers from all 28 EU countries. Officials were anxious to sign up as many states as possible to resolve the contentious issue. The Maltese Interior Minister Michael Farrugia says all or most EU countries should take part in the dispersal of migrants. Farrugia was joined at the meeting by his counterparts from Italy, France, Germany and Finland. Now, after a year on the streets, it was Greta Thunberg's moment at the UN Climate Summit. In a raw, emotional speech, the teenage activist asked world leaders, "How dare you?" This report has more.
Since landing on the U.S. shores on a sailing yacht in August, the Swedish teen has shed light on the disastrous consequences of unchecked climate change. With a rousing speech, she questioned the legitimacy of solutions that have already been put forward.
For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight?
The teen activist said ecosystems are collapsing and a mass extinction is underway. While addressing the summit, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said the world needs more ambition, more pressure, and old-fashioned truth-telling.
I want to tell you clearly, we can win this race. You can count on me to be on the front lines, pushing and prodding for climate action every step of the way.
Many heads of state addressed the climate summit and reiterated their efforts to fight global warming to safeguard against the hazards of climate change.
Let's begin business news in Europe, where stock markets have crept up on cautious optimism about trade talks between the U.S. and China next month. Oil prices have eased by 0.5% as concerns about global demand overshadowed doubts about Saudi supplies. London's FTSE 100, the DAX in Frankfurt, and Paris CAC index are all trading fractionally higher. Gains were restrained by negative manufacturing data coming out of Germany and Japan. In Asia, the Nikkei 225 index closed flat after Japanese factory activity slowed at its fastest pace this year in September. The Shanghai Composite regained some of yesterday's losses to trade 0.25% higher. Hong Kong's Hang Seng index was fractionally up after 6 straight trading days of losses. Time now to find out what the weather is like around the world. Before letting you go here for this bulletin here at Indus News, let me just get you up to date about the breaking news story we've been following about the 5.8 magnitude earthquake that struck Azad Kashmir's Mirpur district. According to the Deputy Commissioner of Mirpur, he is now confirming that 8 people have died so far and 100 plus are injured. Those are the latest numbers we've received here at Indus News. Certainly, we will be following that story very closely. Please do stay with us.